And next, it changed. The picture changed.
Yeah. Now we're
okay. So we're speaking a little bit about contraception. I know that again, Rabbi Sigmund has covered this many aspects, but I want to just look at come a few questions and to see the practicalities of the difference. A woman's 35 years old, 8 children under the age of 10. She wants to use contraception. A woman's 35 with 2 children under the age of 10. 2 children. The youngest one is a year old. So even though they're both 35, they're twin sisters. One of them's got 8 children, one has got 2 children. Obviously, different questions. And 35 have 1 child who's 12 years old. So now the woman's already been using contraception for the past 5 years, and then she suddenly comes and asks. We got married 2 weeks ago, and we want to build our zugiyut. We want to build our couplehood together. What sort of contraception we can use? Not asking should we use it or not. What's the best method? We have X number of children. We don't want any more. So the question then is the question of we don't want any more children. What's it in there? My husband doesn't want to have relations unless we can use contraception, which we have the whole time. I had a case that today, that a couple were told not to get pregnant, so he was just motzi zera levatala. We have a financial consideration. Is that a consideration? We have a genetic problem. One of us is a carrier of HIV or AIDS or any other such problem. This is only Israeli questions. My husband's in Keva, he's in the army. He comes back every 2 weeks. So now we're using contraception in order to know when we're going to get a period, not necessarily to not have children. And we're going on holiday for 2 months. So now I want to use contraception. I want to push off the period for now, for something very specific. And the question that we get is, which is the best method? I got that today. Which is the best IUD according to halacha? So that's a method. So I want to go again before we look at the methods. I know that you looked at many methods. We'll look at 1 or 2 today. Rav Moshe has a very interesting tshuva. Rav Moshe says there was a young couple, Sirei B'nei Torah. Torah Talmunato, יש להם 2 בנות קטנות, גדולה בת 3 והצעירה בת שנה. So the situation is they have 2, and the younger daughter has leukemia. But they want to now use contraception in order to be able to have time to deal with the older daughters. It seems that it's intuitively with that. Rav Moshe is very machman on this question. Moshe says, I understand. עכשיו הם שואלים שאלה עדינה בדבר מניעת הריון, ילדה חולה, the sick child should be at home, and they need to spend time with her. He said, מאידך, on the other hand, הזוג רוצה לעשות את הטוב וישר בין השם. They want to do what's right. הם מרגישים שהזמן הוא העידנא דריתחא, ומידת הדין מתוחה עליהם, והם רוצים לקבל, לעשות שום דבר נגד רצון השם. So Rav Moshe says the following. He says, I don't understand. They can have someone else look after the child. Again, we're not going to look at we'll send you the PowerPoint. You can look at the tshuva inside. So there's they didn't make the mitzvah approval. They don't have 2 daughters, and they can get someone else to deal with it. So what was it? My bad. So Moshe is very interesting tshuva. I know that everybody knows where Moshe was. You saw the tshuva I know from Rabbi Sigmund a couple of weeks ago. And Moshe says we don't answer these questions. B'shat hachag, and don't answer the telephone, and it has to be only for a limited amount of time. But I think here's a very, very fascinating tshuva, because what Moshe does, and I think it's very important when we think about contraception bichlal, is that he gives us a whole a reset, a mindset to think about, which is so counterintuitive to what we would think. Child's got leukemia. Couple, their house is in a whole balagan, a whole mess, and I think it's clear we'd say the mutar. And Moshe says, Mabaya, that's the problem. The problem is to look after the child. So to find another problem to look after the child. They have the mitzvah of Mekayim Puravu. So there's no heter to mekapech the mitzvah because you have an external problem again. So when we talk about contraception, I think that there's this misconception about contraception. Though it's mutter, there's absolutely not a question. And the only question is when and how much. And Moshe has this whole different approach, and we'll see in a moment with other poskim, that it should be clear that this is a very b'diavad situation. I think that when we speak about contraception, we speak about it proactively. So we speak about it with the high school with students. We speak about it with our kehillah, with our young marrieds, whatever. It should be clear that the contraception is not something that's pashut. Everybody can use it. And there's no chovah. If you have a certain shikul, you can use contraception. The other thing I think is very important, I'm sure that it came out of Rav Sigmund's last 2 shiurim, is that every contraception method has a price to pay. There's no way of having a perfect contraception method. That's perfect, which means 100% effective, has no side effects, has no halachic problems, is easy to use. That doesn't exist. The Pashut doesn't exist. Anybody here wants to go into big business, and remember that the contraceptive business is a billion-dollar business, multi-billion-dollar business. And if you would create such a thing, so you would also be a multi-millionaire, maybe even more than that, and you'd be able to support Machon Pua and courses like this for many, many years to come. And I said to many, many students, go and create a perfect contraception. And yet, up till now, I've been teaching for many years. No student ever came with such a thing. Doesn't exist. There's always a price to pay. I said to a couple just a couple of hours ago that that his wife doesn't want to take this and want to take this, but she wants to be this and wants to be. We have very, very serious demands about conception. And I said to him, as I said to every couple, you have to realize there's a price to pay. And the question is, which price are you willing to pay? The price you're willing to pay is we're going to have bleeding, or the price we're willing to pay is we're going to have side effects, or the price we're willing to pay is they're going to have a baby. We don't have a very effective method. So all those are prices. I don't know what price you want to pay. I can't tell you what's the best method. I can tell you there's a price to pay. And I think the Rav Moshe here says there's the price. The price is there's a mitzvah. The mitzvah proof. So you're not making the mitzvah if you use contraception because you don't have a boy and a girl. We know that the din of pruvu, how many children should we have? And this is, I think, a place we should also start about when we speak about balabatim, that it should be ben v'bat or shnei banim. The Zohar says that in this case we can hold like Rabbi Shammai, since we don't really, it's not really be a dime for us. We can't really determine whether it's going to be a ben or bat. But there's beyond that, and I think there's also people say, well, I prove I have a boy and girl, that's it. There's also a din of lashevet. Lashevet, lo tol avarav yeshevet tzara. The Gemara says, or the Rishonim have and Rishonim achronim have machlokes exactly. What does that mean? Is that in addition to approval? Was that included in approval? Is it another two children? It's machlokes we'll see already. And beyond that is also another mitzvah, which is la'erev, mamash v'sveras omer that we're finishing now, chodesh tov. That there the Gemara says in Yevamos that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim died, and the Gemara says if you have Talmidim Yadutcha, you should also have Talmidim Beziknutcha. And on that same page, on the same sugya, the Gemara says you have children when you're young, you have children when you're older. Shneimar is a pasuk from Kohelet. So you have a mitzvah of la'erev. La'erev is also a mitzvah. I.e., what does the Torah want to tell us? What is Chazal in their explanation of this pasuk, and they're utilizing this pasuk to tell us it talks about having children, not only about having talmidim. The Torah wants to tell us, or Kadosh Baruch wants to tell us, that Judaism wants to tell us that we have an obligation to continue producing, to be productive as long as we can. And so even if you're older, you still have children. I have a cousin that had a baby when she was 53. She got pregnant at the age of 52, perfectly naturally, and had a perfectly healthy baby at the age of 53. So they will continue Le'erev. That's Vaday Le'erev. There's an Indian to continue having children. You can have children as much as you can. That's the horror of the sugya. There's a machlokes and a Rishonim and Achronim as to exactly what's the tokev of this pasuk. Sometimes it's a chiyuv, sometimes it's muser. Maybe it's derabona, but we don't kofim. Or maybe it's only hishtadlus. It's hishtadlus, so we should remember in not so long ago, only 1 or 2 generations ago, if people had 10 children and 2 of them survived, that was a big miracle. And people had their children, and many of them died. Many of them died young, and therefore that seems to be hishtadlus. Maybe that's how the Chida explains it. What is isurim? People think, what's the problem? Problem conception is not a problem. Is out. So what's the isurim? We talk about conception bichlal. What is the problem that we're looking at? First of all, the ikar problem is bitul mitzvah approval. The reality is that most of the methods that you learned about last week, and we'll look at a couple today. Today's maybe the most problematic, but most of the methods that are widely used, the IUD and the pill, the oral contraceptives or different types of hormonal treatments, there's no real halachic problem with them. The problem is a bitul mitzvah approval. We have a mitzvah of la'erev, mitzvah of lashevet. We mevatel a mitzvah of approval. And that's something that we need to take into account. People need to think about that, even that it's, but I'm not motzi zera levatala. Nachon, aval yesh mitzvah approval. There's also mitzvah ona. There's a bitul mitzvah ona. I got a call today, not so long ago, from a Rav, older Rav, who said he has a balabos, not so old, but he has a problem getting maintaining erection, and therefore he has a problem of motzi zera. So he said, so it's a problem. He has to deal with it. He said, yeah, but his wife's anyway not going to get pregnant because he's already older. He said, no, but there's not any kesher. The mitzvah of onan, mitzvah approval, 2 completely different mitzvahs. and therefore there's no kesher between the mitzvah of approval, mitzvah or not. Sorry, I mean you can probably hear the dog, my neighbor's dog in the background. I'm sorry about the dog. It's part of our. It's already part of our family. It's like we have our own dog. Baruch Hashem. It says shomer and I guess shomer, but it's it didn't hear the pasuk lo yachatz kelev l'shonot. It makes a lot of noise. So there's other mitzvahs. We said mitzvah l'shevet, mitzvah l'erev. There's also questions of Otzat Zera Vatala or Hashchatat Zera, which the pasuk says that it's a lotinaf, or there's other isurim of Otzat Zera Vatala. We'll speak about it a little bit later today, because that's really the problem we're going to speak about when we talk about a barrier method. That there we really have a question of Mamash Otzat Zera Vatala. There we really have a question of Hashchatat Zera. So the Smak says that it's Isur Doraita, lotinaf. However, many of the poskim, bin and sin, others say that there's no real isur mufurash. The mitzvah of erev onan is not really a mitzvah of. It's not really an isur. The isur of erev onan is not really an isur of otzat zera. It's an isur of otzat zera. According to many of the rishonim, otzat zera in order not to get pregnant. So it's not really a mitzvah. But there's no really isur if now it's more otzat zera. And according to some, it's here the Ramban says the Rabbanan. Maybe it's machlokas with the right. We think that because of Shulchan Aruch, because of the words that it's the isur chi chamor, as the Shulchan Aruch says in Even Ezer Chav Gimel. So we think it's mamash. It's got to be it's more chamor than many isur. It's also not so clear what the isur is. There actually is a fascinating Aruch Shulchan. The Aruch Shulchan says that the reason why it was isur otzat zera vatala is because we know that inside the microscope, we saw that inside the sperm cell there's a little human being, and therefore it's really retzach, it's really murder if we waste speed. Of course, it's not true in the time of the Aruch Shulchan. Already, nobody thought it was true. It was true in the late 17th century when the Hertzkauer saw under the microscope. He said he saw a little human being in a sperm cell. We didn't. I think that maybe the Aruch Shulchan wants to give a little chumrah. And the others is the Yisur of Sirus. Yisur of Sirus is also, of course, a problem that we could think about. So there's the Isur of Sirus. Those are the Isurim that are connected. The Mishnah Halachos of Menashe Klein has a shaila whether a woman can be used contraception because of tsar. She had tsar. He says Mishum tsar isha. So he says the following. It also gives us a little bit of an understanding, a little bit of a perspective. And the Afki Vadai Chayav Abal Achus Al Koch Ishto B'Tzara Ba'al Atzmo. בשביל טעם זה להציל עצמו ולא באיסורים חמורים כאלה. הוא אומר, כי אני רואה כמה נשים, כן, they're so worried about צער גידול בנים, והם גופם באותו זמן הולכים לעבוד בבוקר והשכם. They work the whole day. That's not צער. ואינם חסים על הצער מפני שמקבלים שכר, because they get paid for it. They get paid for it. Oh, it's okay. So if I get paid, so suddenly it's not czar. So the person wouldn't for getting paid. However, get paid to work in order to bring children. That's a big.
He says, my father called Pink to bring equipment. Before that, I called it in right as soon as I came there. I called it in H-Base right away. My stuff. I said, get me out of ALS. I get me through. Yeah, they all people came. They give me.
Rabbi Brickman, you gotta go on mute. Rabbi Brickman.
Rabbi Brickman, right. Everybody can hear you. Rabbi Brickman.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Brickman, everybody can hear your conversation.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Tov. Continues the Mishnah Halachos. Kam kasherim lehem lachatuna bar mitzvah. They dance half the night. The rikudim of cholot they don't complain. והרק שצריכים לקום לפעמים לבוא בלילה suddenly it's a big tzar. So I don't know if we necessarily posek like this, like the Mishnah Halachos, that really it's a problem that if the woman has to do a shikul, how many times does she get up in the night to go to watch a movie, and how many times does she look up to the other? But again, it gives a perspective. The perspective is we're talking here with a problem. It's not that Sukkot is mutter, and the only question is which method. Like we said before in the opening questions, what's the best method? The etzem the Indian is something we need to take into account, and we know that using contraception is a shaila, and therefore the idea of we have a problem. I don't have enough cost to raise my kids. So the client says, yeah, but you have enough cost to go to wedding every night. You go to wedding, that's okay. That's not a problem. But and you come back late at night and you're exhausted. You get the next day exhausted. That's okay. But to look up the child, that you're not ready to. So I think it's important to think of that perspective, even if we don't agree necessarily with the Pesach. The Moshe, as we said before, had a lot of tuvas about contraception, and Moshe seems to make a very serious distinction between the method of contraception. So he says using a moch, which is basically a barrier method. We're going to speak about it today. So Moshe, the question of Otzar Zera, because we're using a moch, because we're using it, here he's talking probably about a diaphragm or a condom. This is already a problem that only in the case mamash of pikuch nefesh. The woman has a nervous disposition. Therefore, she's worried of getting pregnant. We can give her head to not daber. And then we can say with moch mamash. When we say sakana doesn't have to mean mamash sakana. Moshe says even that she's very worried about getting pregnant. There's a great concern, so it'd also be mutter. Let's stop for a moment and ask. Rav Moshe didn't ask this question, but let's ask. Now that we know that as women get older, there's a greater chance this is going to have a child with a genetic abnormality because the incidence of genetic abnormalities increases significantly as a woman gets older. So is that also considered to be a reason not to get pregnant? We could say that a woman over 40 is also, she can use even with a moch, even a question, even something halachic. However, continues Rav Moshe binyan lekichat glulot. When we're talking about taking pills, there's no danger. And we have to be careful that she shouldn't see bleeding. I always thought a question, well, why is that a problem? There's no issur for a woman to see bleeding. There's no issur for a woman to see blood. So why do we have to be careful that she shouldn't see blood? And I think the answer is that Moshe says the following. Moshe says the problem is that since we know that certain pills will cause her to see bleeding, and she might not know that, and she might not see the bleeding, so we're going to get into a question of that there will be a possibility of Ra Machmat Tashmish, or that she won't notice she's also, and they'll be over on Isur Nida without knowing it. That's what I think what Moshe says. No Isur for women to see bleeding. Here's Moshe, even in if it's talking about pills, then only if it's talking about a financial consideration, it's also good. Even if we don't have approval, we're talking about here about pills. Pills is not a problem. So again, so Moshe makes a very serious distinction between the method. So couples come to me and they say, "What's the best method to use contraception?" The question is, "What's your situation?" And the other question is, "How long did your Rav allow it?" So many Rav Banim they say you're allowed to use contraception. How long? Whatever you want. What's the method? So that's Yereg Valyavur. We can't give it a gipsak. We say to a couple, you can use contraception without any sort of binding of time, and also without giving them some indication about what the methods are. This is what Moshe's tshuva is. Moshe says there's a difference between this method and this method. And even if instead of talking about a question of pills, which isn't really halachic problem, other than maybe she'll see bleeding, and we mekamech the question of pruvu, that's not the whole be okay. הקשה החלושה יכול לקחת פילים, מאחר שאין בזה עניין של הוצאת זרע, לבטלה. Rav Moshe seems to say that the moch is a question of הוצאת זרע לבטלה. And since the question of הוצאת זרע לבטלה, then we could say that only really in the case of sakana would be make it. The reality is, and we'll see this a little bit in a moment, we're going to speak about these methods, a condom or a diaphragm. The reality is that they're not always the best method in a case of real sakana. There's not really a case in which you really say the real sakana and we need to use a condom, and that's very specific cases. We'll speak about them in a moment. That's a very big hara. The doctor says they have to use contraception. No, the doctor says he suggests you use contraception. And this is a sakana. The doctor didn't say you have to use contraception. A woman's after birth doesn't have to use contraception. A couple that gets married don't have to use contraception. The doctor says maybe preferable. They don't have to. And here I think you already saw this tshuva. I think that Rav Sigmund already brought it. That you have to have the doresh v'chaker. You have to look at the tamim v'chule. What are the shikulim that we can be matir? When we say we want to be matir conception, what are the reasons why we would want to be matir? So the first one, pikuch nefesh. Clear in the case of pikuch nefesh. And pikuch nefesh, as we just said, doesn't have to be real pikuch nefesh, but even safek pikuch nefesh. So a woman who has just given birth through cesarean, and the possibility is that if she gets pregnant very quickly again, there's a small sakana. There's a safek pikuch nefesh. A safek pikuch nefesh, we don't look at necessarily at percentages. So since it's that case, well, then we would say mutter.
Excuse me, Rabbi? Is it only the woman's pikuach nefesh, or even potentially the pikuach nefesh of a baby, like you said, was going to have?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Hochman. We'll see. I don't know. Koshi nafshi. Rav Moshe doesn't say have to be pikuach nefesh. Koshi. Yeah, it's difficult. We have a difficult with the family situation. But even that, you saw that Rav Moshe wasn't making in the case, because clearly koshi nafshi, when a child has leukemia, you have to look after it. It's clearly koshi nafshi. Rav Moshe was machmir there. Why? The mekaner its approval. Koshi physical problem, physical question, a difficulty looking after the children, or physicality between husband and wife. Rotzelanik, another woman wants to feed the child. We think that feeding is very, very important. Hanukkah is very healthy, and therefore the woman says, "I want to. If I get pregnant, the doctors tell me I have to give up nursing." That's not so clear that that's true. We have to give up nursing, and therefore I want to continue nursing. It's healthy for the child. The woman needs to have a rest. She wants the menucha. We just saw that. Manasseh Klein didn't think that was a good reason. Question of a genetic problem. We have a problem. We know that the child's going to have a chance of having a genetic abnormality. That's clearly a case, so we would say that's mutter. Shalom bayit. Not even a question of pikuach nefesh or koshi. Shalom bayit. The family's not functioning. Husband says every time my wife gets pregnant, the house is falling to pieces. The children are going crazy. Shalom bayit. Limudim. We have to do. I'm in the middle of my doctorate, my PhD, my master's, my whatever it is. The financial situation. They want to build together. And I think that, and that's sort of Hochman, I thought that we had it, that they have a slide in there, but I don't remember there was, is also the question of the health of the child. All of these are related to the child. So we can say that pikuach nefesh, if clearly there's pikuach nefesh for the child, clearly mutter. That in the case that we said, a genetic problem, which may have a problem with it. So we'll say the reason I have X number of children, that's enough. 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever it is, it's enough. I don't need any more children. There's a very, very big machlokes, as we know, and I'm sure that this the Devarim Yeduim, as to whether a couple is allowed to use contraception before they have children. We just got married. We want to build a zugiyut. But Moshe says the following: "Ub'mashen nistapek b'kvot Torato כשרוצים מתחילה לעשות נישואים ורוצים לבקש עצות שלא לדבר." She doesn't want to get pregnant. ואם לא יתירו להם ידחו את הנישואים שנה-שנתיים. Though we don't permit them, they'll push off the wedding for a year or two. שאולי יש להתיר כיוון דפורבו לא יקימו בכל אופן. So the Shoel wanted to say, maybe anyway, what's the problem with Matir? The problem is bittul pruvu. They don't get married. Also going to be bittul pruvu. My high. יש להתיר כיוון שלא יעברו על הדה, אמר רב נחמן, אמר שמואל, אסור לעמוד בלא אישה. Maybe they're going to get married and then to not get married. So the shikul to get married is if they don't get married, then in the Vadai have a constant of over Nisurim. Isur Yichud and Isur Nagia, maybe Isur of Otzazel Vatala. There's other possibilities. Says Moshe, Hanei Tzadak for Totos. Yoter Tov lehem latir lehem lasot Isurim. Aval lo yechlu lasot eitzot shelo yitaber. Ha'em b'zeh sakana. Says Moshe, the whole point we said that child, if we didn't become the mitzvah of Puruvu, the whole heter was only for sakana. Here there's no sakana. Lo. Va'av shani matir l'shamesh b'moch b'makom sakana. We just said, Halo shayach latir rak makom sakana. But only in the case of mamash sakana. K'le katavti. We just saw before. Uvaha vahacha ha like often shetarti. Here there's no sakana. They just don't want to get pregnant. They just want to build their relationship. ורק זה שהתרתי לשמש רק בימים שלפי דעת הרויפים לא יוכלו לטבר, ובימים שראוי לטבר לא ישמש יש להתיר. So Moshe, I have a very good answer for them. They shouldn't have relations at the time when she can get pregnant. Okay, that's the easy thing. Just don't have relations at the time you're going to get pregnant, and then it's some sort of hishtadlus. The Kodesh Baruch will tell them to decide whether they get pregnant or not. ואף להניח שם לפני תשמיש מיני סמים שלא יניחו לטבר, and maybe they'll use also spermicide. That's also מביאה באופן שאינו סותם מלהיכנס לזרע. In a case that it doesn't create a barrier, then לא ניחא לעניות דעתי להתיר להסתרק לכתחילה על דעת זאת. It's not so נוחלי, but the Moshe doesn't sit us. So Moshe says, to use a barrier method, to use something that's a question of outside Zelavatala, only in the case of sakana. Here there's no sakanas, we also. However, not to have, they don't have relations every day. The Shulchan says that if a person becomes as bo'el ishto b'kol eit, he has to have relations every single time he can. Yefeh, aval, we don't have to have it. And maybe even to use spermicide, lo nochli, but maybe yes yatiru. So that's a Moshe's tshuva. That is clear from a Moshe that it's a big problem. However, Rav Henkin, recently, Rav Henkin wrote it differently in Bnei Banim. Badai bitul mitzvah ika mishavu alav 20 shana kedamina. B'perek kama the kiddushin at 20 shana kodesh baruch Hashem mitzaper. First of all, it's a bitul of getting married. Getting married is also a din. וכתב הרמב"ם, מכיוון שעברו 20 שנה ולא נשא אישה, הרי זה עובר ומבטל מצוות עשה. Even דחיית גיל הנישואים היום יוצאת משונים עצומים. The Moshe says of Henkin, בעצם the Rambam says they're not getting married is a problem. You want to tell me the problem is because they're not becoming this approval? מניין לך? עצם the problem of getting married, they're not getting married is a problem. What's the problem? They're very visurum. And therefore there's an Indian that we want to makadem that people should get married quicker. However, if they get married quicker, they don't want to have children. So we have a problem. So what does the Rav Henkin say? We're trying to get married as quick as possible. Maybe it's a he says, they have to have children. However, do I prefer they get married, not get married? We see that not getting married creates more problems, and it's a bigger problem. The shit of Christ is a bigger problem. We push it off. They're saying we're not going to get married, and the spirit. So maybe we'll be matir something. At least they should get married. And we allowed them for 6 months, but not for longer than that. For a very short amount of time. Sheken Rashai Achatan Lifo Liyot Malach. The Chatan can say when he got married, I want to be a sailor. Going to the sailor on a Toys Pamba Shisha Chodoshim, so he becomes a sailor. So for that, the Shana Rishon is a sailor. So they have relations twice in that year. I.e., how can I put? It's mutzah because my Mishnah Mefreshet that a person can decide to become a sailor. The woman can maneh, but the mice he has the right to become a sailor. So if he has the right to become a sailor, so how is that possible? If he has a chiyu approval, it should be for the first 2 years. Everybody's assured to be a sailor. Why? Otherwise, he's mevatel mitzvah approval. Mashma that it is mutar to mitzvah approval. Therefore, he says, "V'dai b'shiur sheshichadoshim la'anot al rova hisusim v'pachadim likrat hanesuim b'fad mitzad hakala." The kala is worried. 6 months is usually enough. You have to also remember, not everybody gets pregnant every single time they have relations, and everybody has whenever they want to get pregnant, they get pregnant. She's worried that maybe the wedding shouldn't be so good. So we already saw in this very, very brief Hagdama, we saw several things. First of all, we saw the question about the Isurim, the Heter. We saw that Rav Moshe makes a distinction between the method that is going to be used. We'll speak about it in a moment. And we also saw this brief description of the machloket as to whether it is better to get married and not have children, or to get married and have children. There's no Isur, there's no Heter to use contraception until you have children. It seems to be everybody says lefachot is a problem. However, b'diavad, the question is, do I encourage people to get married b'chol mechir, or do I say there's a package deal? Once you get married, you have to have children. Therefore, if you don't want to have children, you shouldn't get married. Different, maybe different places and different era. Rav Henkin's grandfather was almost a contemporary of Moshe. Was a little younger than Moshe. So maybe a generation or two later, we see that the world has changed a little bit. Maybe in Eretz Yisrael is different than in America. So, and the other thing we saw, which I think is very, very important, and very important that we should retain this as poskim and retain this as from Yidden, is the perspective. Is to realize that when we are teaching, we're giving a heter, we're speaking about conception, and we should be proactive. This is something that every chatan should speak about, because this is something that every chatan is already become a given, that they think it's mutter to use conception immediately and for as long as they want. We should be proactive. We speak about what is the chovah, what of a person to get, what is our shlichut, what are we the shlichus is that we want to fulfill the Kodesh Baruch Hu's ratzon. The Kodesh Baruch Hu's ratzon is lo tov bara l'shevet yitzara le'erev v'tanach yadecha. It's also a mitzvah. We want to continue to have children. Doesn't mean everybody has to have 18 children, 20 children, but everybody should have. It's to have a family that's as large as they can. And to be able to educate those children as well. It's not just have children that'll be on the street. Children should be educated. Just to think a little bit about that perspective. A chatan once came to me after marriage, and he said to me, "I've got a question for Simcha. What's the questions?" He came with his wife, What was the question? They want to speak about contraception. So I said, I gave him this whole shir. And we just now, that's the problem. He said, I don't understand. They told me you have to go and ask the rabbi before you use contraception. I thought the rabbi just has to matir. It's like it's like a ATM machine. I go in, I put in my card, I get the heter, I go home. I thought that was it. I didn't realize it was actually a whole shaila. So I said, so then why did you come to us? So he didn't ask me anything else. That was it. That was the last question he ever asked me. So I'm not upset he didn't ask me any questions. I have nothing to do. However, the misconception was that somehow this is a heter, but you need sort of the rubber stamp of the Rav to say it's okay. I think in that case there was no reason that there should be no monere on more than maybe a couple of months. I think also that it's definitely a generational thing. When we got married, there was no shayla that you try to get pregnant immediately, and now I think it's a biduk efech that for many, even quite from people, it's clearly that they push off having children for a couple of years without a shayla, and maybe it's our chovah to think about, at least to give that perspective. I think we already. I know that you spoke about. Even if you pay $10,000, I would still give them the same shayla. It's the same tshuva. So I know you spoke already about the methods with Rabbi Siegelman. So we'll just go very, very quickly, and we want to look at some of the more problematic methods, not the hormones. I'll send you the page. You get it. IUD, I know you spoke about already, and different types of IUD. The problem that we want to speak about is the barrier methods. The barrier methods, the problem is clearly a problem of Otzad Zeh Levatal. Once we are blocking the passage of the zera, then we are creating, according to most of the poskim, a question of Otzad Zeh Levatal. We know that the Gemara says in several places that Shlosha Meshamshim b'moch. There are 3 that use the moch, and the moch then is a machlokes rishonim as to whether they're talking about a moch during relations, as Rashi said, or after relations, as the Ri says. That it was the Tosfos says that it's talking about a woman who washed herself post-coitally. After that relationship, she would get up and wash herself. That's the moch. She would clean herself out. That's the moch. According to why would need to have the second explanation, because the Tosfos says that otherwise it's motzi zera alitzim vavanim. It's mamashal tzad zeh levatala, and that's really the question that we have in the barrier method. Is this considered to be motzi zeh levatala? There's a very famous tshuva of the Achiezer, that the Achiezer says that having relations with a condom is not a tzad zeh levatala. Why? The Achiezer explains because that we have here the Maaseh. Since we have Maaseh, since we have the act of intercourse, the act of coitus, therefore that's not Otzad Zeh Levatala. Otzad Zeh Levatala is masturbation. Otzad Zeh Levatala is that is motzi zera, not vaginally. But once I'm motzi zera, even if somebody blocking it, that's not considered to be motzi zeh levatala. That's the agav, the heter that we use for gathering in the sperm with a condom for treatment. That's the heter that we use. Why? How do we come up with the idea of having a condom? Why did we say it's isur otzad zeh levatala? And the answer was because the Achiezer, since when we saw this already together, seems to say that's not considered to be a problem of motzi zeh levatala. However, that tshuva, the Achiezer, is generally not the accepted opinion. There is an interesting opinion of the Goinim. The Goinim say, it appears in Otzar Poskim, that if a woman had relations with a condom, then that's not considered that it's mashbia, and therefore, for example, if it was a goy, then she wouldn't be considered to be a zona, and she would be muteret to a kohen. So then, again, that's not a daya that we somech on so much. I once mentioned in the tshuva online. If someone asked online, I mentioned this tshuva, and then I got hundreds of questions. You matir with using a condom, you matir that. So it's not true, but there is a daya. There's a daya like that. If we can't ignore that daya. But b'chol that's a bit of a chiddush. So it seems to be that's exact opposite of what the Achiezer says. The Achiezer says this is regular beer. That the tshuva and the Otzar Poskim says say back afuch. That's not bichlal beer because it's the barrier method. It's bichlal not considered to be negir. So there's a stir between those two tshuvas. And generally, say we're machmin. You saw already in Rav Moshe. However, Rav Moshe seems to matir the diaphragm. Even when he says a moch, he means it. He maybe means a diaphragm. Maybe means a condom. It's a machlokas exactly how to understand. Rav Moshe seems to matir the diaphragm, and it became pretty much makubal in America that a diaphragm was mutter. Let's understand how a diaphragm works. The diaphragm, as it just says here, fits over the cervical opening, preventing sperm from entering the uterus. It's almost always used in conjunction with spermicide. The spermicide is the chemical compound that kills sperm, and it's almost used together because the reality is that the diaphragm is a very bad method, a very ineffective method of contraception, and even with the spermicide, it's maybe 80% effective. Without it, it's very bad. The other thing is that it's important to remember diaphragm is that it covers a cervical opening, and each woman has a slightly different size cervix and a slightly different size vagina, and therefore it has to be fitted for that woman. So they come in different sizes. Well, I don't know what size the woman is. Can't look at it and say you're 60, you're 70, you're 80. We don't know. So it has to be fitted. The other thing is that as a woman gives birth, the cervix becomes a little bit more open, it becomes a little bit more elastic. So she has to be fitted every time. Every time it has to be fitted to fit the size. It's very important. Otherwise, it's very, very ineffective. So Moshe says the reason that it's matir. We just said it's motzi zera of elit simavanim. That was the tuba that we saw. That was the tosfos that we saw in the name of the Ri. That says that it can't be during tashmish. Otherwise, motzi zera to. So Moshe says because here he's not motzi zera levatala. He's not motzi zera elit simavanim because he doesn't feel the diaphragm during relations. And since the zera doesn't come out on the diaphragm, therefore it's not called elit simavanim. Look at the picture here. I mean, the picture is impossible. That he's not motzi. But I feels it. He doesn't feel it. It's pliable. So he doesn't that he bangs into it. It's like he's banging into a wall. It's not itziva banim. But b'cholovin it's motzi zera on the diaphragm. So there's a conjunction. There is a suggestion made by Rav Yoel Katan that maybe what Rav Moshe is talking about is something completely different. It's not used anymore. Called a cervical cap. And a cervical cap is exactly the same thing, but it's much smaller, and it's placed mamash over the cervix. The reason why it stopped being used is very, very hard to use because the diaphragm one puts in by itself, whereas the cervical cap, to get it over the cervix, it's very hard. It's deep inside. Not everybody has such a long finger, as the Gemara says, local etzbot shavot, and it's not so pashut. And therefore, maybe that was what Moshe was speaking about. There, mamash, you can't feel it. It's mamash very, very deep in. So that's a conjecture. We don't know if it's true, but it's very makubal in America. Those that somech on the Rav Moshe using a diaphragm. In Eretz Yisrael, Kimat nobody uses it. The other things we just said, you have to realize that it's not very effective. So if a woman comes and says, I don't want to use anything, I only want to use a barrier method, you have to understand the diaphragm is only about 80% effective. It must be honest, it's not 100%. It's very far from it.
Arav,
yeah.
Just based on this, would we just say spermicide by itself is considered mutar? Is that considered feeling something?
So spermicide is basically a chemical that kills sperm, and it's about 70% effective. So Rav Eliyahu, Chacham Eliyahu liked it because he said it's not very effective, so it's a great method. So it's not issue. The only issue is to prevent pruvu. If we're not preventing pruvu, then it's great. We have a lot of. They used to come in suppositories, and suppository in Hebrew is called nerot. So they used to call them ner neshama. That the child would they use it and they get a neshama down. They bring it would be a good way to bring neshama. So that's what they call ner neshama. So spermicide lechor is a shaila of whether we say there's a itzur of hashchatat zera by a woman. So machlokes rishonim and achronim. The dafka the Mishnah Berurah is machmir on that. Many rishonim are making, many achronim are making that it's actually not. There's no issue of hashchatat zera. Based on what we just saw, the mishamshim moch is after they used it, after they had relations. Mashmi see the pshat there of the Tosfos is that there's no issue of hashchatat zera. So that's the first spermicide. Spermicide is not very effective. So when could we say that we can use spermicide? We can use spermicide. When is it more effective? A woman says, say, nursing, in the first 6 months after nursing, and she can't use anything else. She doesn't want to start hormones because it's going to cause a bleeding, as Rabbi Sigmund, I'm sure, discussed in the past couple of weeks, and it's also going to cause a possibility with the milk. So she wants to have a method. It's not a chovah. She doesn't have has to not use not get pregnant, but it's a shtadlus. So there we could say spermicide is maybe effective. The other thing we could do when sometimes women really can't use anything and they just need to have it to go with. She used the IUD and she's bleeding. She used the hormone, she's bleeding. She's going crazy. They never have relations. It's always, they have a wonderful, effective contraception. They never ever have relations. That's the most effective contraception. However, it's killing their marriage. It's terrible for Shalom Bayis. So that's such a case. So then we could say maybe test when you're ovulating. If you're ovulating, don't have relations at all. Like what Moshe just said in the tshuva to the young couple. Don't have relations at all. And when you're not ovulating, then use contraception. Why do we need the spermicide when she's not ovulating? The answer is very poshut, because ovulation is not so ovulation is not so exact. Doing exactly when you're ovulating. So to cover myself, that's why when you're not ovulating, use spermicide. That gives us doesn't give us 100%. You have to say to everybody it's not 100%, but it's close. It's closer to 100% than just using the spermicide by itself. Things that are very, very problematic. First of all, a condom. The condom, we just said, is according to Kimat all the poskim, is a isur otzazer levatala, and it's either soderaita or derabbanan. When would we say that that's mutter? What would be a case in which a condom would be mutter? The most important case we saw at the beginning of the shaylas, if a person has a communicable disease, the man has AIDS. So Rav Eliyahu said, if a couple have AIDS, one of them has AIDS, they have to get divorced. They can't have relations because he doesn't matter the condom. They can't live without having relations because they're married couples. So he said they have to get divorced. But many poskim don't say like that. And they say in such a case, it's if it's even for long term, definitely for a short term, they has herpes or something that's going to be dealt with, or he has a sexually transmitted disease that's being treated. So like chlamydia or such a disease. So then we can say they can use a condom, but that's only for a very short amount of time. There is no such thing, and we spoke about this before, as a halachic condom. The people coming up and say, "Oh, we'll use a condom." Why? We use a condom with a hole. There's no lokayam. Doesn't exist. There's such a head. There's no halachic condom. The other thing we have to remember is that even though people say a condom is effective, a condom is also only about 70% effective. Why is that? Why is a condom not 100%? For two reasons. First of all, people don't put it on properly, and second of all, it splits, it breaks, it rips. So some of the sperm can come out because it wasn't put on, and then it rips. So actually, the woman calls me up and says the doctor says they have to be 100% effective, and I can't use pills, I can't use IUD. You have to use a condom. I said if the condom says the doctor says you have to do a condom, then you don't have to be 100% effective because it's not 100% effective. So the other methods you can use that are as or even more effective than a condom that are not a halachic problem minimum, like we just said before, that she'll check ovulation. And she'll use spermicide. That's more effective than a condom by itself, but has no halachic problem with it. The condom, all the condoms contain spermicide as well, almost all of them, as a double backup. The other thing is a femidom. A femidom is a thing that a woman places inside the vagina, and that the man basically ejaculates inside. Someone just said it's a little bit easier because it's by the woman, and maybe that's also another question of hashchatat zera. Also, he doesn't feel it so much; it's not tied closely on the penis that he can't. He's motzima mash into this bag, into this balloon. But the Maisa is, all the poskim said is the same. We were just by Baruch Nevinsel recently. I asked him, he said exactly the same. Ain't if there between a condom and a femidom.
I'm sorry. I mean, forgive my ignorance. Maybe I'm the only one on this call who doesn't know. But is that what we call a female condom? Is that the same?
Yeah. Femidom is a female condom.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing. It's just that the woman puts it inside the cervix, inside the vagina, and it opens up as he goes in. He basically opens it up. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Morning after pill is a very big problem. Not halachically, it's a problem because it's not so healthy to use it, and it's also the only times we really use it in a case in which we have rape, or a case in which a couple, let's say, were using contraceptive, and they would really need it because of pikuach nefesh, and they forgot to use. So then we'll say we'll use it morning after. But to use it as a method in certain places in the world, they used to use it as a method morning after. Postinor is already weeks that you can take it a few weeks later. And that actually causes a miscarriage. That's much, much more problematic, and that we should not be using as a method. The other problem is coitus interruptus. Is mishkal hasog.
I apologize. Can we back up? Can you explain why the morning after is a problem as opposed to the morning before?
Morning after pill is not particularly healthy. So therefore, there's not really a halachic problem taking this. It's not healthy, and therefore to use it as a one-off mela, but to use it as that's the method we're going to use it. That's problematic. It's not. It's not a good. It's not a healthy thing to do. We don't have to use it. Coitus interruptus is basically motzi zera levatal. It's basically to Mishkal Nasok is that we have relation with Zoreh Dashbif Nev Zoreh Bechutz. That's vadai a problem. And in fact, Fakir, as we just said, many of the Rishonim say that the problem with Aaron was not that they were Motzi Zera. The problem was they were Motzi Zera in order to be used as contraception. So if that's the reason you're using it, vadai it's a problem. That's vadai a problem of more than anything, and we don't do it. Permanent methods, clearly a question of, we said before that most methods of contraception don't have really a halachic problem. All the methods we do are the mamas. These are the things that are the most halachic problem. Hotzat zelavatala, and of course, a vasectomy is vadai sirus. A sirus of a man is still the writer. Not only is we have many people who are choser b'tshuva or megayer that already did a vasectomy before, and then if they want it, then the question is, if they have a vasectomy reversal, is it effective? Not effective. Generally, it's not very effective. The question is, do we say that there's afterwards, then mutal avobikal if he did a vasectomy reversal? So most poskim make it, but it's a big method. It's a big hack to do. Unfortunately, in America, it's very common to do a vasectomy, and that also we should speak about. Sterilization, to do a cauterization, to do a tubal ligation. There was an article someone wrote in RJJ a few years ago that he wanted to say it's not a question of serous, because, and we had some shikul, not because of what the Tzitz Eliezer says that it's reversible, but because of some other shikul. Also, Shefta said it's clearly not true. Because it's mamash serous. The Tzitz Eliezer, we said he wanted to say that it's reversible. It's clearly not reversible. We know today that there's no way of reversing tubal ligation, of cutting the tubes, tying the tubes, cauterizing the tube, banding the tube. There's no way of reversing it. And in fact, it's easier to reverse a vasectomy than it is to reverse a tubal ligation, because the vasectomy, you basically connect the two tubes. The tubal ligation, the fallopian tube is such a thin organ that what happens is once you connect it, it basically created a kink. Once you create a kink, the egg can't go through that. And then you're going to get always ectopic pregnancy. We get all the pregnancies will be outside of the uterus in the fallopian tube, and that's very dangerous. So it's just not reversible. I said that to a Rav recently. Posek Chashuv. I was sitting with at a mill, and he spoke about it, and I said, it's not reversible. It's not reversible. He was surprised. He thought it was. It's a lot of medicine that clearly we don't know. That's clearly a problem of serous. In which case will we be matir to serous for a woman, which is according to most poskim is a silder rabbanon. We know the Gra is machmir, but most of the poskim hold like the Rambam and most of the Rishonim that is a silder rabbanon. In a case in which we have the woman really couldn't use anything else. Also, if you have a woman who's already older, so then we have a question of, is there sirus after sirus, which is a machlokas and a Rishonim, and whether it's sirus after sirus. Okay, I'd very much like to see if someone can send me that the sefer. I'd very much like to see it, or send me at least how we can get a hold of it. It looks like interesting. Thank you very much. So then we would be matir to do tubal ligation. We do with midday palm. A woman says that she has no other method. She can't use anything else, and she already is postmenopausal, or she's really, if not pikuach nefesh, karov lepikuach nefesh. So in such a case, then we could say that we can use tubal ligation. But we try to use other methods possibly before relying only on tubal ligation. You have to remember also tubal ligation is not 100% effective either, because a woman can use it, but still in the first short amount of time after the tubal ligation, she can still sometimes get pregnant. And so there are cases a woman did tubal ligation and still got pregnant. Nothing's 100% effective, but it's very close to 100% effective. Some wanted to say there's something that the Esher is a coil that's placed in the beginning of the fallopian tube, and around that is built scar tissue. So some wanted to say that if we're already giving a heter of tubal ligation, this is easier because it's grama, that it's not actually we're cutting it, but we're doing it's grama. So, there was an article like that by Rav Yoel Katan had like that an article. Others, first of all, it's not very common method today. It's also very expensive, and we don't see really that most of the poskim thought that it really was a big difference between Eile ve'Eile. If someone can send me on that link to the WhatsApp group, that'll be very effective. Shakov, thank you very much. I can't do it top of the day here. So, but this is also some Esher. Maybe there's someone to say it's easy. These are things that are permanent. The problem with permanent is a question of serous, and the other thing permanent is it's permanent, meaning that you can't go back on that. Which means that you only do it if we know really that we're not going to have any more children. So I'll give you an example. A woman couple say And we have 5 or 6 children, Baruch Hashem, the woman's already 40. We don't have any children. And you know, we'll do tubal ligation, we'll do, and then something happens. Something happens that they become fruma and they want to have another child, or chalila, something happens to one of their children, and the tikkun is to have another child. So we have to understand that, and you can't really set it to a person. Maybe something happened to one of your children, they want to, but that's the reality. So we have to be careful not to so quickly push people to do permanent solutions, because they are kipshuto, permanent, and that's a baya. Let's look at another couple of methods. The rim method we spoke about before. It's not very effective. In Hebrew, they call it yamim betuchim. I like to call it yamim alokukap betuchim. It's not very effective because as we said, ovulation is more complex. But if we use that together with spermicide, we're increasing. This is just a nice chart. I'll send it to you about what people are using. What are people actually doing? What's common in America? And this is a very, very important chart. I know that the Reb Sigmund sent you a similar chart. What is effective? What in fact is what, if we look at spermicide, the sponge, the condom, the femicondom, all are basically the same. All hormonals are basically the same. The diaphragm here puts it at a higher level. And the unused deity, this is very makil on a diaphragm. And the IUDs and the implants are about the same. And here we have another, this is nice pictures you see. This is probably the most important slide. And the most important slide, let's take, for example, pills. Let's take oral contraceptives. So if you look at the first column, the yellow column, we have a 92%. We look at the next column, it's 99%. The last column, the right-hand column, is what's the ideal effective efficacy. How effective is it in an ideal situation? The answer is almost 100%. But the middle column is what's the actual effect? That's 92%. What happened? People forget to take the pill. People had they had diarrhea. They took it late. So the reality is that it's actually much less than the effective. When we look at something like an IUD, 99%, 99%, it's got to be the same. Why? Because now you can do what the IUD is not dependent on what a person does. It was put in by the doctor and it stays in by the doctor. If we look at a condom, we look at a femidom, for example. Theoretically, it's 95%. Reality, it's 70%. Why? As we said, it splits. People forget to put it on, etc. So why is that important? That's very important because if I have a couple, and there are couples that we have that need to use contraceptives, not just give me a heter. Well, I'm giving a choiva to use contraceptives. Got to go to the Gemara says. According to the Machlokes Rishonim, is whether mutar lehem or chova lehem, that they have a chova to use the moch. So if I have a couple that really they're sick, and they need to use contraception, and I don't somech on the woman, I don't somech on them, or I think they won't use it, then I need to give them a method that's not dependent on them. Women tell me, I forget. I'm a forgetful person. I can't use pills. I'm not going to remember to do it. So give them a method like IUD, which is not dependent on them. Have a couple that I'm dealing with that are mentally impaired. They have a very low cognition. I can't give her pills. She doesn't take them. So in that case, actually, she has a metapelet who forces her to take the pill. But in such a case, they were living by themselves. You'd give them to have IUD. It's very, very important to think about that. And we give a psak what method to use. The method has to tie in with that person's life. So if we say, well, diaphragm is easy and it's very healthy, it's there, but really it's only 80% effective, and this couple really need to use contraceptive, then it's not good enough. Then that's not a good method for them. So the method is not only what's good for what's ideally good, it's what's tachlis for that couple. What's good for them. And it's very important when we think about contraceptive is that we matim it for them. We speak about the perspective. We speak about the amount of time, and we give a method that is effective and realistic for that couple. And if it's a couple that are not going to take the pills, then taking pills is not effective for them. If they need to use contraceptive, could be the opposite. Could be we have a couple, as we said before, I don't really think they need to use contraceptive. So we'll give them a couple, like Rav Moshe says, that at the beginning of their marriage, I'm not going to give them the heter to use anything else, but they can use the rhythm method. The rhythm method is not very effective. We just saw here 75% effective. Mitsuyan, mule. What's the worst? They get pregnant. Alavai, mitsuyan. So we have to think about that as well. I think a very, very important slide. So that's, I think, a little bit to tie up what Rav Sigmund spoke to you, and a little bit to tie the tachlis of how to give a psak, and look at some of the more problematic methods. And I think we get a siyum on the whole issue, the complex issue, and the very, very relevant and pertinent issue of contraception, as we can see We can see. Shailot?